Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Hungaroring, the second race of the weekend for the Radical European Masters. 60 minutes to look forward to around the 4.3 kilometre challenge of the Hungarian Grand Prix circuit, the Hungaroring, about 10 miles outside the centre of Budapest. And you join myself, Ben Evans, and Alex Mortimer alongside me on an absolutely beautiful summer's day. It's going to be very hot work, I'd imagine, for the drivers at the wheel of the cars, because they've got an hour's racing ahead of them. In many instances, they're going to do that hour single-handedly, Alex, and they don't get too much rest around here.
Yeah, this is certainly a busy track for the guys. Looking around the lap yesterday, there's only one real straight along the start-finish that they can recoup and have some time to gather their thoughts for the rest of the lap, but a really frantic lap.
So here's the grid then, with Yanni Herpier and Brian Caldwell on the front row. Race 1 winner Christian Jeffrey lines up in third, ahead of Jim Booth, who should take the lead into turn 1 in the V8. And then John Caldwell and Mark Crader on the third row, and Gerhard Watzinger completing the field. And well, yesterday we were treated to quite an entertaining race, because Jim Booth, having got the lead, was sort of playing hare and tortoise in a single lap, in that he was sprinting away on the straights, being caught through the corners, and it bottled up the rest of the pack.
Yeah, for sure. We see around here that the 8s and the 3s don't have the huge gap you might see between them at Spa, because the V8 can stretch its legs. So it makes for a good race. They record similar lap times, but they deliver it in a different way. You know, the SR8, very quick down the start-finish straight, pulls out in Sector 1, but through Sector 2 and 3, the 3s catch back up through the twistier stuff. So it really did build for an exciting one yesterday.
It certainly did, and we had a good scrap late on as well between Yanni Herpier and Brian Caldwell, who share the front row. Eventually it was decided in favour of Brian Caldwell, mainly because Yanni, it's a gentle way of saying this, harpooned him into turn 1 on the last lap, and as a result did the right thing and waved Brian through, recognising that the move was ambitious at best. Fortunately, neither car too badly damaged, so they're both there on the front row of the grid.
Yeah, I think it was actually the other way round.
It was, wasn't it?
Yeah,
yes.
Yeah. So Brian did end up in the side of Yanni. So, but I think no love lost. Both guys hard racers, and I know after the race they were chatting. So it'll be interesting to see how they develops this morning. Yanni had huge speed yesterday in the race, so it will be Brian will have his work cut out to try and go with him.
Yeah, and that's really, I think the key for Yanni is that if he can, he will look to break away early on, as he did yesterday, and build a little bit of a buffer. So the field off on to the formation lap now, and they've got the 10-minute pit window mid-race, between 25 and 35 minutes of the race duration. And so that's where the element of strategy starts to come into play, because of the two driver entries. Well, Brian Caldwell may come in quite early to hand over to Stuart Mosley, and Mark Crader likewise to Bradley Ellis. Yeah,
I think you called that right. For sure, anyone with a pro in the second half of the race is going to want to get the car into their hands as soon as they can. It's in their best interest result-wise. So whereas we saw Mosley and Ellis go late into the pit window yesterday, I think we'll see him early in this today.
Yeah, so they are heading down through turn 2 towards turn 3. This is a left-hand hairpin, the road falling away from them as they then have the right-hand kick at turn 4. And I mean, you've driven around here, Alex. From the perspective here, it looks like an immensely satisfying corner.
Yeah, really enjoyable. A number of corners here really enjoyable, but I think this track really works on getting good exits. There's a lot of long radius corners. They need a real high entry speed in the SR3 class. You know, looking for a late apex and getting a good exit, especially for this section here, because you head out onto a straight that ultimately goes uphill. So just need to maximise your exit speed.
Yeah, and this is what the drivers are really learning all the way through the weekend, is there is a subtle difference between actually the technique you apply in qualifying for a quick lap time versus what you may need to do in the race to hold on to your position.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, qualifying obviously all about the one lap speed. What is easy to do though is go for a car setup that might work the tyre and get a little bit of extra performance in qualifying, but you can actually do damage to it, or you know, lessen the tyre's life and make it worse for the race. So the one thing that's also quite interesting here that you see working out is the guys are all starting on brand new slick tyres. So qualifying yesterday was in the wet, so these slicks, the first time they've been on. I've noticed a couple of the guys doing runs through the pit lane already, just trying to get an extra lap, just to try and get some heat into the tyres. Ultimately, in their first heat cycle, the tyre does increase in pressure a lot more than it will in the second and third and fourth and onwards. So it will be interesting to see how the guys are working around that and trying to keep the tyre underneath them.
Yeah, they have. They've got to make the tyre last for the 60 minutes. This is a track where you can work the tyre quite hard. I think the other thing to say is it rained up until about 10 o'clock yesterday morning. Thereafter, it has been very warm, very sunny, and as a result, the track has just increasingly rubbered in over the course of the last 24 hours or so. So it's probably going to be a little bit grippier than they had for the race yesterday, and possibly over time we'll just work the tyre a little bit harder.
Yeah, watching GT qualifying this morning, there was some mighty fast lap times going in. So I think there will be a lot of rubber going down. The track should be in a better place than it was before. It's not as hot just yet as it will be this afternoon, I think. So so hopefully we should see some nice lap times now.
Yeah, should be an enjoyable race, this one, as they bunch up behind the pace car. And then they will be released for the rolling start. 60 minutes of racing, mandatory pit stop that comes midway through, and hopefully we'll be in for something as entertaining as we got yesterday, at least in the early stages, if Jim Booth can jump into and keep the lead. That's what we'll be looking for, as the pace car leaves it late to peel off the road, and then it's the responsibility of the mad croc car, the Dark 17 of Yanni Herpia, alongside the red and white of Brian Caldwell, to lead the front row of the field as they come out of the final turn. They look to the gantry as the race about to get underway. It does now. Here comes Jim Booth, plants the right foot. He leads almost before they cross the start and finish line as they head towards turn one. Gerhard Watzinger also off to a reasonably good start. It's Brian Caldwell who has been shuffled a bit as Christian Jeffrey makes a little bit of contact with John Caldwell. Oh, and they all bump into each other. Fortunately, without any damage, I don't think, to anybody. Although it was a little bit of a tap from John Caldwell to the rear of Christian Jeffrey as they head down into turn three, and it's Jeffrey who moves ahead of Yanni Herpia. Just about as Herpia runs wide, the Caldwells run side by side. A little bit intimate between the pair of them as John moves ahead of Brian as they swoop down out of turn four.
Yeah, no love lost between the brothers there, and worked out quite well for Christian. Did take a small bump from behind, but it's pushed him into the lead, to be honest. So so he just needs to really get his head down now. Yanni, we know he's going to have speed. He's going to be aggressive. So I think Christian's got to manage that. If he can keep him behind, go for it. If not, might be better just to let him go and chase. And
this could all be quite good news for Jim Booth if he can maintain a buffer as they jink through the chicanes at 8 and 9, and Gerhard Watzinger much closer to leading group than he was in the early stages yesterday, which is good to see, as just running a little bit offline there was Mark Crader, running very wide there, Brian Caldwell. That might slip him into the clutches of Crader as they swoop out of turn 13. This is where they've got to be so careful with the track limits. We have seen drivers being penalised in all the classes racing here this weekend, putting four wheels over the line. Oh, that's late on the brakes from Brian Caldwell.
Yeah, we're just hoping he hasn't got a flat spot from that. So that's certainly something early in the race at this point. You don't want to pick up a flat spot. You're going to have to carry that for the next 58 minutes. So not ideal.
And he clearly feels that he's quicker than John, as you would with when you're racing your sibling. Whether or not he can get past him is another question altogether, as Christian Jeffrey closed up to Jim Booth, and Jim Booth checks out down the start and finish straight. It's just about 1,000 metres, I think, this start and finish straight. It was extended a few years ago to improve the overtaking potential into turn one, and as a result, it just means Jim can stretch his legs a little bit more as Yanni sits in tow behind Christian. Now, of course, success seconds come into play, and because Christian won yesterday, essentially if Yanni can stay with Christian, then it means that he should jump him in the pit stop.
Yeah, there's definitely, hopefully Yanni should have got rid of this success penalty from Portimao now, so it will shape up at the stop, but you know, Christian just needs to bang in consistent lap times. He was fast yesterday towards the end of the race and kept his nose clean in the early portion. So so this, if he can do the same now, it should lead to the same result.
Yeah, Yanni also appreciably less aggressive than he was in the early stages yesterday, and possibly could be because he was not overly furnished with grip in the latter stages of the race. As again, a bit of a lock-up from Brian Caldwell at the back of your picture.
Yeah, I think there's a good spot there. I'm wondering whether he has picked up that flat spot, because it will always return to that spot of the tyre. So he may well be managing that. You can see they've dropped some space to John, and Mark Crader is now hard up behind him, just looking for an opportunity to come by.
So it's not just the stickers that look like a dice now on Brian Caldwell's car, possibly one of his tyres, as Mark Crader looks to challenge him. Brian a little bit more circumspect on the brakes, and turn 14, somebody squeaking, or it was Gerhard Watzinger in the background who was running out very wide, rejoins, and that's the beauty of these asphalt runoff areas, is that it's not quite race over in the way it used to be. And again, Christian Jeffrey up to Jim Booth. Jim Booth says, thank you very much, I'll see you later. Accelerates away.
Yeah, it's this was the thing we saw yesterday. So hopefully Christian should be able to manage it. The V8 will go away in this first sector with a bit of straight, but come the middle and second sector, we're going to see the SR3s come back. As long as they don't catch him too early in the lap, it won't hurt Christian. And right now, looking at it, he has got really good speed in the middle, setting. Oh, see Booth straight on there, and yeah, that won't help.
Yeah, that will hurt his chances just a little bit, as Christian using all of the road coming out of turn 3, out over the curbs. Now, here is a replay of the start. Now, what are we... It's Brian Caldwell who got a little bit jumped. There goes Jim Booth. And that is a demonstration of how quickly the V8 goes.
Yeah, there's no substitute for horsepower now, but you are going to see what we sort of feared for the SR3s here. They're going to catch Jim in the chicanes. They will be hard up against him very quickly. You see there immediately, just through the direction change, how much quicker they are. So Christian's going to have to start looking to attack Jim, but also keep Yanni behind him.
Meanwhile, Brian Caldwell and Mark Crader have paired off. It's John Caldwell who is having a little bit more of a lonely run. And this is the challenge here for Jim Booth, is that he's got to nurse the tyres maybe a little bit more than Christian Jeffrey and Yanni Herpius. Now we're getting into the race. And Yanni might be close enough here to have a look at Christian, and certainly thought about it.
Yeah, he's looking. It's a tricky downhill braking zone, that. So you need almost a little bit of an overlap from the previous corner. So hard to do if you've still got ground to make on the brakes.
The other possible opportunity here is actually into the final turn. If Christian's getting bottled up behind Jim Booth, if there's a hole that presents itself, that could be an opening, as out they sweep. Away goes Jim, but this time Yanni is in the tow behind Christian Jeffrey. He's going to force Christian, I think, to have to defend into turn 1. We're going to have a Nelson PKN 87 all sideways move. No, we're not going to have a move at all, which is interesting there from Yanni Herpia.
Yeah, I mean, Christian really obviously picking a good braking point there, and was confident with it. Yanni with a slight cutback on the way out. How's this going to work out?
Don't think he's going to be able to get through, because he's to the outside at turn 3. Christian Jeffrey covers the inside line, and Yanni, as a result, just stays where he is, which is second in class, third in the race overall. And as they fight, it is giving Jim Booth, certainly through this first half of the lap, the opportunity to open out a little bit of daylight as they climb out of turn 6 into turn 7 as Christian runs wide. That's a golden opportunity for Yanni Herpia. He should be able to take advantage, and through he goes.
Yeah, nice clean move. Really, he was ready there to capitalise early. Saw the hole. Christian was slightly wide on the way in, and he just jumped and filled the space. So good move from Yanni.
Yeah, it was a nice little hole, wasn't it, for Yanni Herpia to go through. And now, can he pull clear of Christian Jeffrey? Can he also find a way to get past Jim Booth and make that move stick, which is something that took about 15 minutes to do in yesterday's race for the race leaders. As Yanni already a couple of car lengths clear of Christian Jeffrey. Then you see the gap back to John Caldwell, who's 3.5 seconds back down the road. There's another 2.5 seconds to Brian Caldwell, with Brian still locked in mortal combat with Mark Crader, and then Gerhard Watzinger again a little bit adrift of that, as now Yanni Herpia tries to draw alongside Jim Booth as they head into the final hairpin. And the trick as well here for Jim is not to be flustered by the SR3s around him and ask too much of the car through the turns, because he knows that he's got this straight to make his escape.
You're right, and it's not a case of Jim not driving well in the second and third sector. His car is not as quick as the SR3s through there, so he has to drive the suit he has here, which is he has more horsepower. So he's just quicker in different parts. Needs to stay in front during the parts he's slower, and he will just continue to extend it when he gets on the straight.
We have had a problem for Brian Caldwell, who peels into the pit lane, and we will find out in due course what that is for Brian. I hope that it might just be that he needs a new tyre.
Yeah, let's hope it's something like that. He's still clocking with some good times up until that until he's come in. So not having the race he would have wanted though. So yeah, let's see what happens. It's a shame. It would have been nice to see how Stuart Mosley got on in the second half, because for sure we'll still have Bradley Ellis chasing Yanni and Christian down. But it would have been interesting to see how Mosley got on.
So it means that Jim Booth still remains our race leader. Yanni Herpia trying to catch up to Jim through the twisty bits on this lap. They have actually managed to shake off Christian Jeffrey quite rapidly, and then Christian in turn building his buffer over John Caldwell, who's pulling away from Mark Crader, who in turn is pulling away from Gerhard Watzinger. But this is still early stages in the race. We're just 9 minutes in. As
you see the same thing though, so Booth just slightly slower through the turn 13, and again holding up Yanni, and Christian will start coming back towards them through this section.
Yeah, and Yanni, he's going to have a little bit of a look around the outside of Jim Booth. That is optimistic, and Jim says, well, if you really want to do it, but then he comes back across, takes the racing line through the hairpin, and not quite sure what Yanni gained from that, other than that he was able to carry a bit more corner speed into the hairpin, but it does leave a glimmer of a door open for Christian Jeffrey.
Exactly, it's a tricky one. You know, it's you have to stay patient there and just wait for the guy in front. You know, if you try a move that's just impossible and to drive around the outside, there pretty much is. You know, all track limits there again. So Yanni's going to have to keep his eye out for that. And
one of the supporting races here this weekend is the Formula Renault 2-litre cars, and into turn one, it's so deceptive because you think you can outbrake your rivals, but because it's downhill, you're braking really quite late. And well, yesterday there were enough accidents that the safety car, I think, scored championship points, and it was mainly over ambition going into turn one, and Christian Jeffrey having to use a level of restraint not to just launch to the inside and find there's no grip.
Yeah, you're right. And still, Christian wide again there, struggling into that corner. Just keeps on just overcooking on the way in, and he's lost a bit of ground to Yanni. He just needs again for Yanni to catch this V8 and hopefully bring him back into the race. Unfortunately,
the bad news is whatever afflicted Brian Caldwell, he's not re-emerged from the pits, so it doesn't appear as if it's the quick tyre change that we had hoped for. The marvels of modern technology may well inform us what was going on there in due course, as Yanni coming back at Jim, and Jim is doing a really nice job because he's not being at all flustered by Yanni buzzing around him through sector 3 on the lap. He's just sticking to his guns, and he knows he's got enough.
Exactly, and we know from yesterday's race it took Stu Mosley and Bradley a long time to get past him, so Yanni is going to have his work cut out, and it's just to make it stick. We know the 3 needs to do the SR8 early in the lap, so at least in the middle sector, so then it has enough corners to get at least a second and a half between it and the 8, and then they're away.
Now, I would venture from that angle that Yanni is running a bit more rear wing today than he was yesterday, because his car appears to be less rapid in a straight line.
Yeah.
Because yesterday he was pulling well clear of Christian Jeffrey on the straight. Today he's not. Which suggests possibly on reflection he realised that there wasn't a whole heap of grip late on in the race, and has looked to rectify that.
So interestingly as well, on that last lap, so fastest SR3 out there was Mark Crader, I think. So now he's been freed up from behind Brian Caldwell. He's chasing down Brian's brother John, and you know, 2 seconds. He took 2 seconds out of him in that lap, and is now only 2 seconds behind. So he's not giving up on a good result here, trying to put Ellis in a strong position for the second half.
Yeah, and John also, relatively speaking, punching above his weight from yesterday. It got a little bit troubled for John in the latter stages as car and driver fatigue maybe began to kick in. Now Yanni, it's just as they come towards the 3rd sector of the lap, each and every lap that Yanni gets onto terms with Jim, and it's through these mid-speed twists from turn 8 through to turn 13 where the SR3s will start to eat up the SR8, which then has the opportunity to just stretch its legs a little bit on this short straight towards turn 14.
It does. It sounds glorious as well, doesn't it? That V8. So 10,500 RPM, 2.7 litre V8 really does howl around here. It sounds great.
Yeah, and seeing these cars when they're in action a little bit later on in the season in Monza, that is where you really appreciate just how quick the SR8s go in a straight line. They are right up there in lap time pace with pretty much anything you choose to think of as over the line, and they all set amongst that leading group pretty much identical times on that last lap, so the gaps remain much as they were. Mark Crader a little bit closer to John Caldwell. He's now 1.5 seconds back, but possibly in turbulent air, judging by the rate of capture slowing. They've then eased away from Gerhard Watzinger. as Yanni Herpje just navigating this downhill stretch. I don't think he's going to be unduly worried with things as they currently are. He knows the success seconds will most likely work in his favour, all things being equal through the pit stops. They also know that the exam question for Bradley Ellis, Mark Crader, in the second half of the race is going to be a reasonably substantial one, possibly about 20 seconds or so for Bradley to chase down.
Yeah, he's going to have his work cut out, but he's capable. He's a super fast guy, a lot of radical experience, and drove well yesterday. Didn't really see his true speed get out because he was always in traffic, so will be interesting to see what he can do today when he's hunting cars down.
As, again, Yanni Herpje just a little bit close to Jim Booth, a little bit earlier in the lap this time around, and this is the point where the first flush of the heat cycle might be starting to go away from Jim Booth in the SR8, and you can see there he's braking about 3 metres earlier than the SR3s into turn 14.
Yeah, exactly. So he has the same brakes, the same pads, the same tyres as the SR3, but just a lot more weight and is approaching the corners faster. So he has a much bigger job to get the car slowed down. So it's just managing that and trying to make sure that he's still got enough tyre underneath him. So. But it's all strategy. All these guys are trying to win their own race, and it really is a sort of a tortoise and a hare approach here. You know, Jim has to drive a really good, clean race to beat these guys. So and he's doing a good job so far.
Through the hairpin at turn 1 he goes and runs off downhill out of turn 2 towards turn 3, and get a slight sense from that camera angle, the way the circuit settles into a natural bowl. It offers great spectator vantage points actually of much of the track. It's not unlike the Brands Indy circuit in that regard, as they're out to the furthest extremity of the track now through turns 5, 6 and 7. Christian Jeffrey setting the fastest lap of the race last time around.
Yeah, really getting the bit between his teeth. I think you can tell he's still in the hunt here. You can see Yanni there. He's not getting away. Christian has got the speed to go with Yanni. He's shown it by just going faster than him. But he does need to keep pushing, keep dragging that speed out of himself, because that's what Yanni is doing really well at the moment. He can, the moment he's freed, he has the ability to just throw it, get straight on the limit and throw it in there and put the lap time down.
It'd be interesting to see just what sort of pace Yanni could run at if he could clear Jim Booth. And even if it's just for a sector.
Yeah, I mean that is the question. He's always being held up in this last sector. So yeah, he just it's a tricky one. It's going to be hard for him to get by. And as I said, we saw Mosley yesterday. You know, take 10 or 12 laps to be able to do it. So he's looking though every lap. Just needs to stay patient. Doesn't want to ruin his own race by having any contact early on.
To pass or not to pass is very much the question William Shakespeare would have posed had he raced radicals. As running wide is Yanni Herpje. He's got to be careful. That's the second time we spotted it, and they're not being quite as firm with track limits in racing as we've seen in qualifying, but nonetheless.
We saw some warnings come out yesterday. I don't know if we saw any penalties. Most of the guys obviously will be waiting to hear about a warning from the team first of all. Well, they'll get that down the radio, and then they know they need to rein themselves in a bit. But yeah, see, Yanni did improve there, a 49.4 himself. Jim Booth taking the fastest lap of the race with a 49.4. So it really is close at the moment, and Crader and Corbell now are together. So interesting to see if Crader can make some ground past Corbell, see if he can just put a bit of pressure on, force a mistake and nip by.
And also, as John Corbell and Mark Crader battle, their pace slows relative to the race leaders, and what was an increment of about a second a lap over Mark Crader has gone out to 2 seconds a lap, and it just makes Bradley Ellis's task a little bit harder when he jumps in the car. The pit window opens in 7.5 minutes time. They can only come in once they've gone the pit lane past the pit lane open board. So in reality, it's going to be about 8.5 minutes before they can start making their pit stops, depending on where they catch the pit board. Now, this has been a slightly less satisfying lap for Yanni Herpje. He's not as near to Jim Booth as he has been. It means that Christian Jeffrey is a little bit closer to him. For Yanni as well, he's got the Challenger running in the turbulent air behind Jim,
For sure, for sure. And that's why I think we probably saw him run wide coming out of the final turn here last lap. So for sure these cars really do respond and need the downforce to work. And when you're close up behind another car like he is there, you just lose all your front steering. You really pick up a big amount of understeer in the wake of the car in front. And it just sends you off wide.
So across the line, this is the 10th lap of the race completed by Jim Booth, who just moves down through the gears, feathers the throttle at turn 1, now can accelerate down towards turn 2. He's got his chasing duo behind him. This group of cars, they've been separated by about a second throughout the course of the race, but nobody's been quite able really to make that decisive manoeuvre.
No, and I could hear Jim coming out that first corner. Revs were quite low. Sounded like he was in third gear, not second as he'd want to be. So he hasn't quite pulled the gap in the first sector that he would expect to over Yanni. So I would predict we'll see them close together through the middle sector and Yanni all over him. So and yeah, here you see the Crader-Caldwell battle. So Mark will be trying to put a bit of pressure on John and just trying to eke his way through.
Yeah, this is the fight for 4th and 5th. And Mark Crader, having reeled in John Caldwell, as yet has been unable to overhaul him rather. And we found that yesterday John's weak spot was turn 13, where he had a couple of spins late on, and that's the section of the track they're beginning to approach now as they wind their way through the Hungarian countryside. And Crader ever closer to Caldwell. The challenge being, of course, where do you overtake? And at the moment, Mark actually just can't get that decisive couple of tenths to pick his way past John.
No, it's a difficult one here. Like we said, you need that overlap if you're going to do it down the hill where we're seeing them going there.
Meanwhile, the leaders back with each other, and again, Yanni just caught with understeer behind Jim through the hairpin.
Interesting, Jeffrey in the toe this time, really getting a good run on him down the straight. See if Christian's ready to make a move.
He thinks about it, has a little bit of a look to the inside, realises that there's not really the opportunity, so nestles back in behind Yanni Herpier. And this has been really the story of the pair of their race, is that ever since Christian conceded the position to Yanni Herpier early on, he's not looked overly concerned, not least because we're only at 1/3 race distance, with trying to come back at him. And so for now, he's sitting there. Maybe post pit stops, depending on how things shake out, that'll be the point that he'll need to look to pull the trigger a little bit more and find his way past Yanni.
Yeah, Christian there again. Still, no, he made his apex there, so he's looked to struggle a little bit there. You can see he seems to visually lose a bit of time to Yanni through that sector, but he's excellent through the chicane section. So it's all relative. He's obviously feeling confident with the car through the chicane. Flowing nice speed there, and yeah, just chasing. Yanni is definitely still the guy, I think, with the ultimate pace here. But if Christian could get a jump, maybe make a move into that first corner, and then he's dictating the speed, and that could definitely help for the strategy.
And it's also a level of recognition that they're not going to be able to make a decisive move on Jim again pre-pit stops. So.
Booth has driven a really solid stint here. He's never looked flustered. He's never found himself defending. He's been quick where he needs to be quick, and he's put the car in the right places on the track. So he's driving a sensible race, and these guys are going to have to work hard to get past him. It really will depend on Jim making a mistake in Sector 1 that puts the guys up close behind him so they can attack in Sector 2.
Yeah, Jim is a consistently deceptive driver in that he's a little bit Alain Prost-like in that he never, ever looks out of shape, but he's always just that bit quicker than you think he might be.
Yeah, and then throws in the fastest lap of the race there. So, he's just getting better as the laps go on, so that's nice to see. And he's, might not be the fastest guy in a V8, but he's very solid, very reliable, and just keeps banging the laps in. So hopefully we don't curse him now and see a mistake. But, he's set fair for a good result here if he just keeps his nose clean.
And Mark Crader was right behind John Caldwell as they came past us. So whether or not Crader's going to have been able to make the move on John Caldwell into the opening corners of the lap, we'll find out momentarily. The pit window is going to open in 2 minutes' time. So here we see, and there's been no change, it's still John Caldwell, car 10, ahead of Mark Crader in number 20. And they're now 17 seconds back from the race leader. Now, pit handicaps, how's that
So,
going?
well, I know Ellis will stop for 5 seconds less than Jeffrey will. So we'll see 5 seconds of that eradicated straight away. So it's going to be 12 seconds that he's got to catch. And you know what? I think if he really gets his head down, that's possible. So so Crader's car looking really good. Mark setting some really nice lap times. So actually, he's gone faster than yesterday. So I know, speaking to those guys before the race, they've made a bit of a setup change in the works car there, and it's obviously working quite well for them.
Yeah, yesterday it just looks as if they've maybe overdone it with the aero for confidence through the corners. It looks a little bit looser today.
You see Mark trying to move out of the way of, move into the mirrors of John, trying to force him into a mistake. It's the right sort of attitude to have, just needs to get a little bit closer. So, you know, John's a wily campaigner. He definitely knows his braking points. Mark's gonna have to put some pressure on him to get by.
And not sure why Jim moved to the inside of the circuit then as they went alongside finish straight, maybe just to have a close look at the pit board, as that was a slightly slower lap from Jim Booth. Actually, it was a second slower than his preceding one, but it's not particularly hurt him in terms of the relative positions amongst the top three. 18 seconds now their advantage over the squabble behind, and they've consistently been about 2 seconds lap quicker, and it just makes it more entertaining for us, because it means that for Bradley Ellis, he's going to have to be on the rate of capturing of around about a second a lap in the second half of the race.
Yeah, he's going to have to chase hard. And looking at the times, Yanni and Christian doing 49.6, 49.7. You know, that's roughly where they were yesterday, and we know that a really fast SR3 here can run in the mid to low 48s. So that's what we saw Stewart doing yesterday. So Ellis has got his work cut out, but he's a driver who's more than up to the job. So so we're expecting big things from him in the second half.
Not that he would tell you that himself.
Oh, he'd tell you that. He'd definitely tell you that, wouldn't he? But you know, certainly a confident driver, and should be with a CV like his. He's won a lot of things and raced a lot of different cars. So so yeah, he's definitely going to give it a big push in the second half.
Other good news is that Brian Caldwell has emerged from the pits.
That's good to see. That is really good to see, actually. And interestingly, Jim Booth throwing in the fastest first sector of this of the race in sector 1. So Jim is not giving up on this. He wants this outright win, and yesterday's success penalty got him. So let's hope he can do it today. Again, defending down the start-finish straight, probably doesn't need to do that. It's the one place he doesn't need to.
So we are into the pit stop phase of the race, and with the pit window open, they may well elect to drop in at the end of the next lap. Christian Jeffrey's just drifted back a little bit from the leading group of cars, and that might just be a strategy of cooling the tyres down a little bit as much as anything else for Christian Jeffrey. He doesn't need to stay right underneath the rear wing of Yanni Herpier, knowing that he's unlikely to make a decisive move on Yanni in this phase of the race, as
he just needs to stay close, though. It's important that he is in the fight here, and you know, you don't ever want to give up any time, and it's only small amounts. A couple of tenths of sector he's losing at the moment, but just doesn't want to do that. Needs to be tucked up there, because that's when the opportunity will present itself. You know, Yanni is still tripping up on the back of Booth through this sector, and all of that presents great opportunities for Christian to get in the mix.
It certainly does, and you know, we saw yesterday in the International GT Open race that if you're near enough to the leaders and it all goes wrong, you can take full advantage and get a good result. Now, whether or not Jim will decide enough of this, I'm coming in early for my pit stop. We will find out momentarily, as Yanni again looks the outside track at the hairpin. They climb uphill, and Yanni Herpier darts in, so he decides to go for the early pit stop, try and get the undercut.
For sure, good team move there. I think the Nielsen guys have got the head screwed on with that one. They know that he's not doing the ultimate lap time. He probably can. He's stuck up behind Jim. So get him in as early as you can. Get the tyres bled down. We know they're going to have ballooned up brand new sticker tyres for the start of the race. So and then get him out hopefully into clean air, so he can start putting in some real fast laps.
I'd venture a question that Brian Caldwell has been replaced at the wheel of the 66 car by Stuart Mosley, judging by the pace that car is now running at, but even at Stewart's formidable powers, I think will struggle to overhaul an 8-lap deficit, as John Caldwell and Mark Crader come in at the same moment. And so half the field have elected to pit right at the start of the pit window. The others will leave it a little bit later. And this is a driver change. As Mark Crader comes to a halt, Bradley Ellis is poised and ready to jump in as Mark vacates the cockpit. And I think could be reasonably pleased with his performance. And Bradley gets strapped in. No need to rush, of course, no need to refuel either for the SR3s, so they can just check and adjust the tyre pressures.
Yeah, and we're going to see Caldwell jump out, I think, ahead of Ellis here. So so Caldwell won't be carrying any penalty, I don't think, from yesterday. So Ellis will be dropping down the order and then having to just chase. So be interesting to see how he gets on. You know, he's a professional driver. You know, he needs to earn his money now. I want to see some fast sectors from the off. So and I think we'll get them.
Certainly an opportunity here for a race victory for Bradley Ellis. But the real difficulty here at Hungaroring is catching the car in front is one thing, finding a way past is quite another. And even if you're a second a lap or so quicker than that car, actually the opportunities can be few and far between.
Yeah, absolutely, and you've called it completely right there. And just getting to the guys is the first part of the challenge. You know, Bradley, a fairly renowned racer. You can see yesterday, absolutely comfortable with close quarter combat. So I think if there's anyone out there who can get by, it will be him. So, but it doesn't take away from the task. Interesting to see as well, Jeffrey there throwing in a 49 dead. So I think that's probably the fastest SR3 lap we've seen in that race. So he has got speed in the locker. So potentially he could be trying to get the undercut here on Herpy. So let's see. Yeah,
out of the pits already is Bradley Ellis, who's right in front of us now. He has come out well behind both Yanni and John Caldwell. There is Bradley. And so there's going to be a fair level of chase here for Bradley. He's 11.7 seconds back from John Caldwell. And then John is half a second behind Yanni. As into the pits comes Gerhard Watzinger.
Yeah, Gerhard joining us from the USA this weekend. Really solid race yesterday and throwing in some great lap times towards the end. So absolutely on par with the other SR3 guys. So I know chatting to him after the race, he was just conscious that he wasn't getting to his pace quite as early as he'd like to. So this morning it was a shame to see him drop a wheel off early on and run wide and lose contact with the pack. But he'll be looking to chase the guys down now and hopefully have another strong finish.
So we're in that weird phase of the race where essentially people are racing cars they can't quite see. So Jim Booth and Christian Jeffrey are really racing for the checkered flag. This man, Bradley Ellis, and Bradley has got 12 seconds exactly actually to reel in on Yanni Hupia, who is effectively the race leader. Both Jim Booth and Christian Jeffrey are going to leave it fairly late in the pit window before coming in to make their mandatory pit stop. So, and
you see the quality of someone like Ellis there. So on his outlap, he's taken over from Mark Crader, and he's put the car's best middle sector in straight away. And Mark was thrown in 49 second laps, so 149. So Ellis with real pace in the middle, then setting the fastest final sector of the race straight away. So he has the bit between his teeth. He obviously wants to have a nice race here and wants to be back up on the top step of that podium.
Well, the opportunity is certainly there for him, as it's just Jim Booth and Christian Jeffrey who are yet to make their pit stops, as Christian accelerates on that run from turn 4 onto turns 5 and 6, and then into this long right-hander at turn 7. Just balances the throttle, gets on the power as early as he can, maximises the exit speed, even though it's a very short run, into the chicane. Flip-flops his way through, and then sprints out again. And Jim, as the fuel load has got much lighter in the SR8, just beginning to elevate his pace, as is Yanni, possibly with a tyre pressure change. He's just done the fastest middle sector of the race so far, although probably that's only going to last until Bradley comes through. Indeed it does.
So Bradley, you know, it's small gains though. So Bradley, personal best first sector, fastest of the race in the middle. So we are going to see some 148s, I think, start getting thrown into the mix here. So, but Bradley has got 12 seconds to do. So to find to Yanni. So he's got his work cut out. Just needs to keep throwing those lap times in. And you see Booth coming into the pits there, attacking that pit lane entrance. You know, Jeffrey coming in behind him, and again, and you know, taking a little bit of time on the way into the entrance there. So let's see how this shapes up after the stops.
And so Yanni has actually for the first lap he's had in clean air to set the fastest lap of the race. So 1 minute 48.3, so immediately able to go about 7/10 of a second quicker than Jim Booth had been able to in the first phase of the race. And so this is the opportunity for Yanni and others to get the jump on Jim through the pit stops. So they peel in, come to a halt, and a little bit of cool air being pumped into the radiators of Christian Jeffrey's car as Jim gets out of the cockpit before the fuel goes in. I think he'll have enjoyed that.
I think he'll have had a great time, but I think, you know, one thing he won't want to do right now is get out of the car and then have to get back in. So obviously he has to do that because of the fueling regulations. But, you know, he's already going to feel a little bit jaded. So having all the energy to get back out and get back in sounds like a small thing, but it's a bit more of a hassle than you would expect.
Well, there used to be a series that ran the UK that made the drivers get out of the car, run 3 laps of the car before jumping back in again.
Yeah, I think I'd give up on that today.
Yes, it was... imagine the Stig on fine dining. It was a different sight in the pit lane, certainly, as here is Yanni Herpia, who will effectively become our race leader because he's coming towards the end of the lap with Jim Booth and Christian Jeffrey both static in the pits. Now, Jim will have a longer pit stop necessarily because of the fact that fuel's coming into the car, and Christian's going to have a fairly lengthy pit stop because he won yesterday's race. So it means that Yanni flashes through and becomes the leader of the race.
With a 48.1 as well, so are we going to see him get down into the 47s? So, and you can see, I think that's John Corbell in the background and then Bradley Ellis popping out behind. So we've got all our lead cars in the same shot here on the start-finish straight, and it now is a straight race. So Christian has now come out behind Yanni. He's going to have his hands full because Yanni has got serious pace at the moment. So let's see how this develops.
Quite how Christian has been able to maintain exactly the gap he had to Yanni Herpia. We will disentangle in due course, but nonetheless, it sets us up quite nicely because Christian, who kept his powder dry in the first phase of the race, now really needs to find something to come back at Yanni in the latter stages to try and claim the victory. So the gaps are Yanni Herpia 1.8 seconds clear of Christian Jeffrey. Christian has then got 6.6 seconds over John Caldwell, and John is 3.9 seconds back from Bradley Ellis. So what it means is that Bradley needs to find 12.5 seconds to win the race. And relative to Yanni last time around, he actually gave away 0.4 of a second. Oh, and that's a pity. Jim Booth has lost the engine. He's going to need a push start to get up to speed, which he receives.
Yeah, back out in the race, so good to see him going back out there. And Yanni still pushing, you know, both he and Ellis setting their best first sectors. So, 39.5 for Ellis's personal best. Yanni again, another fastest middle sector of the race. He really got the bit between his teeth.
And for Yanni, this sequence, into the pit lane, it was Brian Call who was sitting those good laps. So apologies, Brian, that was very impressive. As now Stuart Mosley jumps in. So whatever the issue was with the 66 car, they seem to have resolved it, which is good to see.
Yeah, real shame there. It would have been nice to see them in the hunt. You can see how close this SR3 race is. You can see Yanni, Christian, you'll see John Caldwell popping out in the background behind them. So we've got all our guys on the front straight. So it'd be nice to see them coming together. Ellis now really close to the back of Caldwell. Will want to clear him as quick as he can. You know, a 48.3 again for Ellis and 48.1 for Yanni. So really great pace from Yanni here.
Yeah, if Yanni can sustain it, there's not going to be an awful lot Bradley can do. I think Christian Jeffrey may be a more viable target. We will see. And the pit window now closed. Everybody's had their pit stop. As accelerating on his way, Yanni Herpia again takes another 1/10 of a second out of Christian Jeffrey through the opening sector of the lap. Christian and Bradley Ellis identical times through sector 1, and it's probably the battle for third if we can find it. That's the one that's worth watching because Bradley Ellis is now right with John Caldwell as we follow the race leader Yanni Herpia. In the background is Christian Jeffrey, and Finland has a good heritage of sports prototype racers, going back through the history of motorsport, like Leo Kanunen and the like in the Porsche, as Yanni climbs uphill through to the end of the 20th lap of the race for Yanni Herpia, and
I think Christian getting the hurry up from the team on the radio now, just throwing in his best first and second sectors, really is going to need to keep pushing, because I think Ellis will be chasing him. That's going to be Ellis's target. I don't think, looking at the relative lap times, he's going to be able to get to Yanni, but Christian could be a goal. It just depends how quick he can clear Caldwell. It would be, I think that's the next battle we're going to see. So they are nose to tail on the pit straight at the moment.
Yeah, they'll be arriving into turn 1 in just a moment, and I have to say, Bradley didn't look as if he got enough in the toe.
No, I didn't. Looking at them come past there, it didn't look like he was going to have an attempt on him there, but I think he'll be looking to get really tucked up in sector 1 and hoping to have a stab at him later in the lap.
Here we have it then, John Caldwell and Bradley Ellis, the fight for 3rd and 4th, and essentially here for Bradley, the real task is that he needs to clear John Caldwell and then actually pick up his pace once he gets into some clear air to see what he can do about reeling in Christian Jeffrey. But at the moment, this battle is happening 10 seconds behind them, and
all this playing into Christian's hands. And to be honest, I know Bradley's done some coaching work with John, so it's at this point he's going to hope he hasn't told him all his best secrets, and that John's going to use them back on him. So let's see what he's got. He must have kept some vintage stuff in the locker just to for days like this, so he can get by.
Yeah, but at the same time, it's just some of the fundamentals. Focus on the corner exit speeds. Don't drive overly defensively unless you really need to.
Absolutely. And he'll be looking to get a nice exit out of turn 13 here. Can he have a look down the hill?
Here they come.
Both of them using a little bit of circuit on the exit there, but still Ellis not quite close enough. And all of this great for Christian. So he needs these two to trip over each other for a little while, and Ellis needs to clear fast if he wants to get to Jeffrey.
And the thing for John Caldwell here is just not to be phased, not to make any errors. There's still a third of the race to run. So if Bradley Ellis does find a way past, which he does, looking into... Oh, John Caldwell says, no, you don't, Bradley. Give you some racing room, but not much more than that. And so Ellis has to get back into train behind him. And here you see, in the straight line, this time Bradley's got the toe. This might be the opportunity because he's got John Caldwell beginning to move around to defend his position. John goes to the inside. Bradley looks to the outside and will try and swoop around the outside. Well defended from John Caldwell. He eases Bradley Ellis out over to the AstroTurf, and that was really nicely done.
Yeah, it's a wily old move that one was. So Ellis coming for a late dive. Oh, Caldwell looks like he's running deep, but will be able to stay out there, closing him down. Yeah, he's making him work for it. There's Bradley's going to earn his money with this one. So let's see how this fun unfolds. So John using every trick in his book to keep him back here, but all very fair so far.
Yeah, warning flag as well for Bradley Ellis, which suggests something around track limits. Oh, he goes for a gap that again is... Yeah, the last thing I saw something that finely sliced, it was in a top-end sushi restaurant, because there aren't many gaps between the pair of them. There is not much between them. And oh no, he goes around and he takes Bradley Ellis with him. And John Caldwell spins at the chicane and Bradley Ellis rotates in avoidance. And Bradley keeps the engine going and gets back underway, but he's lost 5 or 6 seconds. And hopefully John, well... to an extent, you can see it coming. He just spent the last 2/3 of a lap defending more and more and just started a bit too much of the car into the chicane.
Yeah, that's a shame because, John was driving really well there, driving a really good, intelligent defensive race. But yeah, ultimately under a lot of pressure, world-class pro behind him. He did well to hang on that long, but just slightly wide on the way in. Just lost the rear of the car, and absolutely nothing he could do about it. Great avoidance from Ellis. Really was on the game there. He'd made the apex. You can see him looking at John there. He knows what's happening, and great to see avoiding him and no damage for either guy really. Yeah,
very, very astute driving there from Ellis. Knew he couldn't avoid the accident, so just put it into the spin to minimise it.
Yeah, it was excellent. There we go. He's driving great laps, and he spun well as well. So we'll give him maximum marks for that. Excellent driving.
So. What this means for the race, though, is unfortunately slightly bad news in terms of the chase that we were hoping to enjoy, because that last lap for Bradley Ellis, he lost 13 seconds. So Yanni Herpier, here he is. He leads by 3.7 seconds over Christian Jeffrey and pulled out half a second on Christian over the last lap. And then Christian's now got a 25.5 second advantage over Bradley Ellis, who's 10 seconds clear on John Caldwell. And John has got Gerhard Watzinger 4 seconds behind him, and then it's a further 20 seconds back to Jim Booth, who of course got delayed through the pit stop.
Yeah, for sure. I think we've been a little bit robbed there, unfortunately, of what would have been the race for the last 16 minutes of this, which would have been seeing Ellis try and close down and get Jeffrey. You can see, battle for the fastest lap has commenced, though. So Stuart Mosley down with the 48.1 now, throwing it in, wanting to take that from his teammate Yanni and wanting to take that from Ellis. So let's see what they can all do. Are we going to see a 47?
We've already seen one, actually, from Yanni, a 47.8, which he set a couple of laps ago.
Oh, did he? Well, fantastic. I mean, yeah, so Mosley with work to do, but really just underlining exactly how well Yanni's going. You know, Stuart and Bradley, some of the fastest pros that have ever been in the Radical Series. So the fact that Yanni is matching their pace really is pretty incredible.
Yeah, his lead to Christian Jeffrey extends to 4.2 seconds over the course of that last lap. And, Christian at this stage in proceedings doesn't really have an answer to Yanni. And Herpia just taking advantage, I think, of the opportunity to pursue the race victory. But now he's still got a long way to go to the flag here, has Yanni Herpia. And he's got to maintain that concentration just because the pit board is going to be telling him all sweetness and light. It's if you start to lose concentration, start to drive within yourself, that's when things can go a little bit wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. Just needs to almost just keep pushing flat out. Don't come try and back out of the pace a couple of seconds, because you end up coming into corners, braking at the same point but with less pressure, and things can get very muddled. So best just to keep pushing, keep on it. Don't take chance, but do keep pushing. Well,
Stuart Mosley's just posted a 1 minute 47.5. Now he's up to speed in the 66 car, and unfortunately 7 laps down. So
yeah, he's clearly wanting to show the team boss Sven David Thompson that he is the top dog in that garage. He's going to take the fastest lap home with him. So but you see Ellis again, a 48.2 on the last lap. He's not giving up yet. He's pushing.
So Christian Jeffrey having had a good weekend, and again with an eye towards championship points here for the Radical European Masters, for Yanni and Christian a chance to really start racking them up, as we've got some break ahead of us. Silverstone to look forward to in September, got Monza, Circuit de Barcelona, Catalunya as well at the end of October.
Absolutely. The Master Series really does take in, as you would expect, the biggest Grand Prix circuits that are available for these guys. So this weekend, obviously not the biggest subscribed Radical weekend we've had, coming off the back of 3 straight races in the Radical Championships and over 30 car grids at the last 2 weekends in the UK, both at Silverstone Grand Prix and at Rockingham. But I'm sure we'll see it back out in full force in the future events. So you see the Jim Booth going around in the new 2017 SR8. So that now really is quite a finished package. Running some new parts this weekend to help cool in these hot climates and performing impeccably. So this series really should follow the UK-based series next year, and we'd hope to see 20+ car grids in the Masters all the time.
We'll look forward to that, and it's often these mid-season races, which is when you're going for a championship, which are the ones where you just need to rack up every point you can get, because often people remember who wins at the start of the season. They certainly remember who's winning at the end of the season, but it's June and July when the race weekends come thick and fast, where you just need to stay out of trouble, take the wins when the opportunities present themselves, take the podiums when the win's not on the cards.
Absolutely, you're right, and that's what wins championships. And interestingly, whilst there may not be as many cars as we'd all like to see at this race, the standard really is high. When you look at you've got world-class professionals at the front doing 48s and low 49s, and then gentlemen amateur racers doing 49s themselves. It just underlines how well these pros have got the gents driving, and how well the gents have adapted to the cars. So it's pretty impressive, really, and ultimately, these sort of cars provide a real ladder into formulas above, whether it's SR3 to SR8 or SR8 onto LMP3 and LMP2 at Le Mans. And we see lots of Radical graduates every year moving forwards into those bigger categories and delivering. So it really is a great feeder to larger prototypes in Le Mans.
And a lot of these drivers as well came into the Radical Motorsport ladder with no experience beyond track days, came in through the SR1 Cup package, and then have just raced through that, got some results, stepped up to the UK Championship, and now have stepped up to European competition.
Absolutely, and that's what we see with the Radical ladder. So, starting in SR1, John Caldwell, who we're looking at there, Brian Caldwell, Mark Crader, all came through the SR1 school and have moved up to SR3, and if they wanted, could move to SR8. So there really is a ladder there, and Radical makes prototype racing so easy to get into. It's a very friendly championship, Pro-Am based, and a lot of it Am-Am based. So it's a warm environment. Fantastic cars to drive, and essentially the prices are incredible. These cars deliver performance on par potentially with GT3 cars, but for a fifth of the price. So overall, a really, really strong package, and enjoyable to race out on these big Grand Prix circuits.
That's the thing. These are the sort of tracks where you can really stretch the legs of the cars in the way that some of the tracks in the United Kingdom you might not be able to in quite the same way. As Gerhard Watzinger in fifth is again getting ever quicker, steadily so, and might actually, between now and the flag, fancy his chances having a pop at John Caldwell.
Yeah, you can see he's chasing him down and taking four tenths on him, out of him on that last lap. And we'd lovely to see Gerhard throw in a 49 here. Again, he'll be able to see John in front of him now. Team will be saying, "Come on, Gerhard, there's a position here that you can do this. You can do this." So let's see what these middle sector times pull up now. So John with a 40.2. Wait for Gerhard to update. 40.1, another tenth in the middle sector. So pushing.
Certainly is. Bradley Ellis continues to push. But Yanni Herpia is driving away from Christian Jeffrey, who in turn is actually only fractionally being caught by Bradley Ellis. So here is Jim Booth, and Jim, that elongated pit stop, not really working in his favour. He's got Stuart Mosley just up the road ahead of him, and that would explain why Stuart's pace just dipped over the last couple of laps. I think he was trying to find a way past Jim to unlap himself and get into a little bit clear air. But now Jim can just accelerate along the start and finish straight, which he does now. Across the line, breaks the time beam. It's a personal best lap of the race for Jim Booth, a 1 minute 48.2. Just uses the mechanical aerodynamic grip available to him to bring the car to a controlled slowing down into turn one. So back to our race leader, Yanni Herpia, and
top effort from Jim though there. 25 degrees heat out there, and over 50 minutes into this race, and he's thrown in his fastest laps of the race, a 48.2. Real corker of a lap, and I think he'll be delighted with that.
Yeah, Jim, I think he started racing in Europe, certainly started last year, and thereafter was always very impressive, just in terms of never getting into trouble and always being there or thereabouts at the end of the race, and just being able to step back from the immediacy of driving the car to always think through, well, this is what I need to do to get the result over the full 60 minutes or so.
For sure, and I think Jim, normally driving his V8 with his son Ryan, who's not here this weekend, unfortunately. But for sure, I mean, at Spa last time out, those guys were winning races. So extremely competitive combo between them, and it'd be great to see them when they're back out.
Well, Christian Jeffrey taking a tenth of a second rather out of Yanni Herpia's advantage last time around, and
he hasn't given up on it, has he? You see him setting his fastest lap of the race there, a 48 dead, and it's down to 4 seconds. So Christian is in the hunt here, really starting to throw the car about, and matching lap for lap with Ellis behind. So really impressive stuff.
And the thing is, when you're within 4 seconds or so of the car in front, it means the car you're chasing can't afford to make a mistake. If you're 25 seconds behind, they can almost have a spin, and it doesn't matter. When it's 4 seconds, if Yanni goes sideways, runs off the road, Christian's going to be on him like a shot. Absolutely.
Well, the pair of them can't afford to give up. There's 4 seconds between them. They're probably going to run another 4 laps. So Yanni cannot come out of the throttle. He's got to keep pushing, and Christian's going to make sure he does.
So we are careering towards the latter stage of the race, just 7.5 minutes to run. And still a little bit of jeopardy about who is going to claim victory here. That said, it's been a very good lap from Yanni Herpia, who I think saw that Christian was a little bit quicker and has decided to just elevate his pace. As Yanni comes past us, sets the fastest lap of the race, so 1 minute 47.5. Pulled that out of the bag versus 1 minute 48.3 for Christian Jeffrey. And so it's a case of take that from Yanni Herpia to Christian Jeffrey, who's not back for good because he now drops to 4.7 seconds adrift of the lead.
Yeah. He's I don't know how I can follow that, but that's it's a bit of oversteer mid corner there. Really is pushing, you know. He's having done that lap there, 47.5. He's gone faster than his teammate Mosley again, so the ball is back in Stewart's court. If he wants fastest lap honours, the team will be telling him on the radio. Yanni's got it at the moment, so it's back on you, Stu. But let's see what he can do. And Ellis, a 47.8 personal best, he's not giving up on it. So let's see what happens.
Yeah, he may have been giving it a little bit too much because he's just actually picked up a stop and go penalty, Bradley Ellis, for track limits, which in no way do we find amusing. And what it does mean, though, is it's going to be touch and go, actually, whether he gets jumped by John Caldwell and Brian and Gerhard Watzinger, because John is 25 seconds back from Bradley, and Gerhard 10 seconds back as Jim Booth and Stuart Mosley both make their way past Gerhard Watzinger. They all give each other plenty of respect and racing room, and that's actually a change of position, is it? Yes, it is, for Jim Booth on Gerhard Watzinger. And so Stuart Mosley also now gets snuffled back up behind the SR8, which won't exactly help his quest for fastest lap.
No, it's definitely going to be harder for Stu now. So again, I think being the laps down they were because of the earlier issues, it's not really a big problem for him. But I think he'll probably just follow Jim home now and keep the car safe and make sure it's in a good position for race 3 this afternoon.
So 5.5 minutes left on the clock, and Bradley's going to have to serve his stop and go penalty before the checkered flag on the race, and therefore he's actually got a limited opportunity to overhaul John Caldwell if John gets to jump him through the stop and go penalty. Meanwhile, Stuart trying to get back onto terms with Jim Booth, but Jim, now that he is clear, it's going to be difficult for Stuart to overhaul him, certainly on this lap, because Jim will be they're coming to the end of it, and Jim will be able to sprint clear on the run down the start and finish straight.
For sure. So, tactically now for the works team with Ellis, it would make sense. They've got 3 laps to get him in. They should run him for those 3 laps, try and put every bit of time they can between Ellis and Caldwell, so that when he does serve the penalty, he can hopefully come back out in front. So, doesn't want to serve it too early, come back out straight on Caldwell's bumper, and then end up not being able to get past, because as we saw earlier, Caldwell not an easy man to pass.
No, as just watching for when Bradley will peel things out on the far side of the circuit at the moment, as Jim Booth, well, question mark about whether or not he's only 10 seconds back from John Caldwell. He's a little bit quicker than John, so there's a possibility that when this all shakes out, Jim may actually snatch a podium from the race if things all swing in his favour. It's a bit of a long shot, but we like long shots, and there is that possibility as Yanni.
As you say, he's taking 2.5 seconds out of Caldwell every lap. So this will end up quite close. They're certainly all going to be close together towards the end of the race. Ellis will know that when he comes in, he's got to attack the pit lane entrance. Really just can't give up any speed. Straight into the stop and go box, which I believe is at the start of the pit lane. So I can see people assembling down there. So he definitely just can't give away any time.
And what you absolutely can't do is then pick up a drive-through penalty for pit lane speed limiting.
No, that would definitely be insult to injury for him. So he is in 3rd place at the moment, so he'll be gutted to be moving down off the podium. So he'll want to keep that 3rd place. Just seen him go past for another lap. So again, strategically, they want to get these as much of a cushion built up as they can. Again, another nice 48.5 from him on that lap. So yeah, he's doing everything he can.
29.8 seconds, Bradley's advantage over John Caldwell. Yeah, he may just sneak out ahead of John. It isn't certain, which is why they're getting him to almost run these qualifying style laps prior to making a stop and go penalty, as Yanni Herpia I don't think he's quite going to start the last lap of the race this time around, because he'll be another 30 seconds to the line to do that, and he's a little bit too far around the lap for that. So he's going to start the penultimate lap of the race nonetheless, and that as a result is going to make it a 33 lapper when he winds his way uphill.
And Jim Booth, interestingly, another 2 seconds out of Corwell. So he's not giving up on that one. There's he can smell a 4th place there, and Team Marewell have told him as well that Ellis has a drive-through. So it might be the overall podium that's in his mind. So Jim cracking on as hard as he can.
Christian Jeffrey still 4 seconds adrift of Yanni Herpia. And now we have the weight, and we can see the stop and go penalty booth ready and waiting for Radius. I make it 3 laps. I think he's going to have to come in on
I
this
think
occasion.
he'll be in this lap. I mean, I think the team will have told him box this lap, do the penalty and get back out there. I think, like you, 29 seconds feels like that will cover him off. And so Ellis going again, choosing not to come in. So
some vigorous waving of the stop and go penalty board by the marshals on the gantry.
Let's just hope that doesn't turn into a black flag. Definitely don't want to see, after a really solid stint, see Bradley ending up with a black flag. That would not be good for anyone.
No, it wouldn't be, and it would be very unfortunate. But I guess what he might be doing is saying, well, I'm just going to keep powering on and then take the time penalty at the end of the race rather than have the lottery of a stop and go. But it's not really at his discretion to make that decision.
No, it's the guys back in the works team maybe on the pit wall, maybe trying to work out that sort of thing, looking at the regulations. There'll be some frantic reading going on down there at the moment, and trying to work out what they do. And again, Stuart Mosley with the best first, middle and last sectors of the race, a 47.59 there. Again, that fastest lap is in danger. Is he going to get it? He's got one more go at it, so let's see what he can do.
Yeah, and well, he did 2 purple sectors on the last lap.
Exactly.
He knows what he's going for.
It could be a Vettel-esque final lap push here for the fastest lap, and if you had to have your money on one man, he's certainly a good man for it. So let's see what he can do.
In to start the final lap of the race is Yanni Herpia, and he maintains that 4-second buffer over Christian Jeffrey. The question is then whether or not Bradley Ellis is going to come in for a stop and go penalty on this, the last lap of the race. And Brian Poulter, who's the race director, will be keeping a close eye on things, because the blue book must be respected, and generally a black flag is the thing that you must respect above all else. And looks like Bradley is coming in from our commentary box window. We can see that he comes to a halt, stops and goes, accelerates off down the pit lane, immediately gets up to the 60 kilometres per hour pit lane speed limit. And so whilst we follow Yanni Herpia, we're sort of looking from our commentary box window to see where John Corwell is. I think the answer is that Bradley's going to have emerged from the pits well in advance of John.
Yeah, Corwell just going into the final corner at the moment, so it will just be coming past the commentating box, in just a second, and there he goes there. So yeah, I think Ellis will have cleanly made that out. So hopefully the strategy of waiting right to the end will have worked out for the works team there, and he'll still stay on the podium.
And Jim Booth as well has not quite succeeded in that capture of John Corwell. 4.6 seconds adrift going into the last lap of the race.
And Mosley throwing in that fastest lap of the race. So well done to Stu there. So he'll be delighted with that. That's definitely one for the CV he'll be proud of.
Yeah, Sven will let him have his passport back so he can get home tonight.
Yeah, exactly. They'll feed him this evening, so he'll be happy.
So climbing into the final turn, it's been a very, very impressive drive this from Yanni Herpia, who has really controlled the race very nicely. He accelerates through out of the final turn, takes the checker flag, and victory in the second of the Radical European Masters races here at the Hungaroring. Second place and another trip to the rostrum for Christian Jeffrey, with then Bradley Ellis well, there he is, back on track. He's en route for third position, just got the last few turns to navigate, and wisely stays within the track limits on this last lap. As you can just see, the forces still buffeting the drivers in that heavy braking zone to turn 14. And looking at time screen, is Stuart Mosley going to have one final run at the fastest lap?
Yeah, he did that personal best, or the fastest lap of the race, with none of his best sectors in. So you'd have to say there's more in the locker for Stu. So he's still pushing out there on one more lap. Let's see what we get when he comes across the line.
So Bradley Ellis takes the checkered flag in third place, and then John Caldwell, solid drive this from John, en route to fourth, with Jim Booth just behind him in fifth, and Stewart was running behind Jim, so he sets a better lap than anybody else managed in the race. So 1 minute 47.5. Just a little bit slower than Yanni's best, as Yanni celebrates on his way through to Parc Ferme, and Gerhard Watzinger has also taken the checkered flag. So they all made it safely through to the flag, which is good. Lots of nice scrapping through the field as well. Let's have a look then at the final classification, with victory to Yanni Herpia. Runner-up was Christian Jeffrey. Then Bradley Ellis and Mark Crader in third. John Caldwell in fourth, fending off Jim Booth at the line. Gerhard Watzinger in sixth. And then Brian Caldwell and Stuart Mosley delayed through a lengthy pit stop early on for Brian. But Stuart bouncing back and setting the fastest lap of the race nonetheless.
Be a brave man who didn't bet against Mosley and Caldwell having a win this afternoon. Obviously, will have lost a lot of penalty, pit stop success penalty now, and should fly.
So this is a look back at the best of the race, and again it was Jim Booth who took the early advantage, as behind it all got a little bit busy into turn one. Fortunately, they all made it through in one piece, with Christian Jeffrey heading the SR3s in the early stages. Yanni Herpia snapping at his heels as John and Brian Caldwell went wheel to wheel. Behind, Mark Crader and Gerhard Watzinger just slipping back a little bit. This was the move then that effectively propelled Yanni Herpia to the lead of the race. Christian Jeffrey slithering wide at turn 7, and thereafter Yanni was able to stretch his legs post pit stops. He maintained that buffer over Christian Jeffrey, and as a result there was nothing that Jeffrey could do. Jim Booth was a little bit delayed in the pits, but he fought back to a fine fifth with a little bit of help from his friends, as Bradley Ellis and John Caldwell did battle. Good wheel-to-wheel dice for what eventually transpired to be third place, as Bradley piled on the pressure to John. Eventually it paid. John kicking sideways, Bradley read it. They both spun, no harm done, and were able to rejoin with just the loss of a few seconds. So Yanni Herpia taking the victory here in Hungary. Second place to Christian Jeffrey, with Bradley Ellis and Mark Crader completing the podium. Head of John Caldwell, Jim Booth, Gerhard Watzinger, Stuart Mosley and Brian Caldwell. So that's it from Hungary for now. So from Alex Morter and Ben Evans, it's goodbye.